Mrs. Thomas, are you ready to begin?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm ready.
Good evening. I'd like to call the January 18, 2022 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Here. Mrs. Blankville?
Here.
Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mrs. Wise?
Here.
Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Cooney?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is the reading and disposal of the journal. Are there any motions? Mrs. Sachs.
If the names are corrected. Okay, so that's corrected. I'd like to move that we accept the journal.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Sachs to accept the journal as corrected. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankville. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankville?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is additions and removals from the agenda and referrals to committee. Are there any motions? I would ask for a motion that we add to the agenda the confirmation of the appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals of Ari Jaffe, Kevin Goodman, and Matthew Caleb. They are listed under my report, but they are subject to council confirmation. So we could add that as an agenda item somewhere, whether it's at the beginning or at the end or somewhere in between. Is there a motion?
Some.
Motion by Mr. Gould. Shall we just take care of that first before item A?
That's just one.
Okay. Very good. Motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankville?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Wise?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, very good. Motion carries. And we'll deal with that agenda item first when we get to the main part of the agenda. Next is comments from the audience. We have asked folks if they would kindly submit their comments in writing, though they are permitted to appear in person to comment. Before I ask for any out in the gallery, I do have one to read, so I will go ahead and do that now. This is from Scott Wachter of 2224 Edgerton Road. And Mrs. Thomas, I will give you this so you have it for the minutes. I want to thank University Heights Council for placing the issue of a fireworks ban in University Heights on tonight's agenda. Even though the agenda indicates a first reading, I hope Council will eventually consider a University Heights ban on fireworks. Fireworks traditionally have been used to celebrate a variety of holidays, but over time, we have learned that fireworks can also cause a lot of damage. Not only are fireworks dangerous in a high-density neighborhood as in University Heights, but the noise and bright lights can cause carnage for our local wildlife, domesticated pets, those who suffer from PTSD, among others. I also hope, should University Heights eventually approve a ban on fireworks, city representatives work with other nearby cities, as sound does not recognize city limits. This needs to be a regional effort to make it effective. Thank you. And that would conclude Mr. Walker's remark. I have no other written remarks. Is there anybody here who has a comment they would like to make during the public session? And if so, you may approach the podium and state your name and address for the record and have up to 5 minutes. If there is no one, then we will move on from the comments from the audience and go on to reports and communications from the mayor. Last Monday, January 10th, the administration released the 2022 budget, putting people first for consideration. On January 11th, I released a narrative going over the budget. This can be found on the city's website on the mayoral page. Rather than read the full narrative tonight, I simply incorporate it herein by reference for the record. It is my hope that all council members and interested parties will have read and considered that narrative before tomorrow evening's Finance Committee meeting. The narrative, while extensive, is not all-inclusive, and Finance Director Dennis Kennedy will be prepared to present at the opening of tomorrow evening's Finance meeting to go over the numbers and the needs and plans behind them. Today is the first day of the spring semester at John Carroll University, so I'd like to welcome back our JCU students. The administration received this afternoon the draft for distribution to council of the Municipal Facilities Study. The consultants are eager to meet with council in the Committee of the Whole at council's next convenience, with an eye then towards making a public presentation tentatively at the February 22nd City Council meeting. In light of the standoff at Colleyville, Texas, where an armed suspect took a rabbi and 3 others hostage at the Congregation Beth Israel Synagogue during Shabbos, we are all relieved that the rabbi and hostages emerged safely. University Heights Police Department, together with other neighboring agencies, increased patrols over the weekend and has been coordinating with Director of Security Jim Hartnett of Jewish Federation Security. We are grateful to have the Federation as a partner during times of heightened awareness to promote increased visibility and safety for the community. Overnight into Monday, we experienced our heaviest snowfall so far this year. Thank you to our Service Director, Jeff Corney, Assistant Director, John Pacella, Mechanic Scott Riddick, and to all of our service employees who came in to clear snow. The first crew reported Sunday evening at 6:30 p.m. and worked through the night till morning, till 9:30 a.m., logging in 14 and a half to 15 hours. The second crew arrived at 9:15 a.m. on Monday and worked 11 to 11 and a half hours till roughly 8 p.m. Another service employee came in at 6 p.m. last night to clear the sidewalks on the eastern end of the city. The western end sidewalks were cleared this morning by yet another service employee. This winter, we have been fortunate. There was little snow in December, and now this storm came on a city day. We were able to devote our resources exclusively to snow removal and not have to cover rubbish pickup as well. I've had feedback from residents overwhelmingly in support of the work our service employees performed these last 48 hours, and I'm thankful as well. I nevertheless want to emphasize that the service department is understaffed, and we did as well as we did with the staffing and the snow removal, given that it was a city holiday. The last pass of leaf pickup began November 27th and was not completed even before this storm due to staffing issues. The budget we released last week addresses this so that we can better serve the community. More on that tomorrow. Finally, I am pleased to nominate for the Board of Zoning Appeals, each for another 2-year term, Ari Jaffe, Kevin Goodman, and Matthew Caleb. All 3 have just finished a term on BZA. They have served the city thoughtfully and with distinction. And I ask council this evening to confirm them all for reappointment. Thank you. This concludes my report. The next item on the agenda is reports and communications from the City Council and the taking of action thereon. There are 3 parts. First being the announcement of appointments to council standing committees. I give the floor to the Vice Mayor, Mrs. Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple words in regard to a council report before I continue on to the appointments of the council standing committees. What's happened the last couple of weeks is that Councilman King and Director Engelbach met to see how to collaborate with Cleveland Heights and South Euclid to explore connections on bicycle lanes and awareness of use. The Finance and Finance Advisory Committee will meet tomorrow at 7. Members will be appointed at the beginning of the meeting, and the main topic will be discussing the draft budget proposed by the administration. We admire the mayor's ambitious vision for the city. We'll see how it fits into the overall budget. The committee has always been committed to balancing the city's budget. The committee will meet to discuss the timeline for many of these projects, as we know we won't be able to afford to do everything all at once. We will work with the administration to determine priorities so that we can accomplish many of these projects in the next few budget cycles. As council members are assigned committees, there will be many upcoming meetings in the next 2 months. There will also be a Council of the Whole Council and Mayor's Retreat, as we've had in the past. We will work to deal with short-term and long-term visions of the Council of Administration collaboratively. And finally, Councilman Gould, who will be heading the Safety Committee going forward, has earmarked standing dates so we can meet the needs of our valued safety forces. So, letter A, announcement of appointments to the council standing committees. I'll go through each committee, the chair, the members, and the alternate. For safety, it's Councilman Gould. The 2 members are Councilman King and Councilwoman Sachs, and the alternate is Councilman Cooney. Service and utilities, the chair is Councilwoman Sachs, members Councilman Cooney and Gould, and alternate Councilman Rock. Finance, the chair is Councilwoman Weiss, the members are Councilman Rock and Gould, and the alternate is Councilwoman Blankfeld. Building and housing, the chair is Councilwoman Blankfeld, the members are Councilman Cooney and Rock, and the alternate is Councilman King. Community outreach, the chair is Councilman King, the members are Councilwomen Weiss and Blankfeld, and the alternate is Councilwoman Sachs. Economic development, Councilman Rock is the chair, the members are Councilwomen Weiss and Blankfeld, and the alternate is Councilman Gould. And finally, recreation, the chair is Councilman Cooney, the members are Councilman King, Councilwoman Sachs, and the alternate is Councilwoman Weiss. In terms of boards and commissions, Mr. Rock will continue on the Planning Commission, and as of now, I, Councilwoman Weiss, will be the liaison to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That then takes us to item 8, the reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, and consideration of agenda items. As the council will recall, we did amend the agenda. We will start with a motion to confirm the appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals of Ari Jaffe, Kevin Goodman, and Matthew Taylor. Is there a motion, which we could take either as a slate or individually? Mrs. Ross.
Can I just make a comment before
Yes,
I make
yes,
a
you
motion? So the past few years, I've been the liaison of council for the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I can say that all 3 of those members are devoted, they're intelligent, they know our code, and they'll be, with the anticipation of a redo of our zoning code, will be an asset to that as well. So I have no problem making a motion as a slate for all 3 of them to be reappointed.
Okay, very good. We have a motion to consider all 3, Ari Jaffe, Kevin Goodman, and Matthew Caleb, as a slate for reappointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a 2-year term to commence February of 2022. Is there a second?
I'll second there.
Second by Councilperson King. Before I proceed and ask for any debate, is there any council member who would prefer that this motion be split and not be considered as a slate? So I do not want to put any council person in the position of not being able to approve the slate if they have any particular issue that they would like to register with any particular appointment. I don't anticipate any, but as a matter of course, I would like to ask. And if there is none, is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? there is no discussion, then Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the motion?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Glenville?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good. Motion passes, and we look forward to their continued service on the BZA. Our thanks to Mr. Jaffe, Mr. Goodman, and Mr. Kayla for their continued service. Next item on the agenda is item A motion to approve Planning Commission's recommendation of approving application from Ronald Kluchin Architects, Inc. regarding 4461 and 4471 University Parkway for new home construction. This is in three parts. First is a request for demolition of two houses, 4461 and 4471 University Parkway. Second will be a request for consolidation of the lots 721-21-056 and 721-21-057. And then the third part will be a site plan approval. Is there anybody here to present on behalf of applicants? If you could proceed to the podium, I believe, though, Mrs. Sachs, you probably had something you wanted to say for the record.
Yes, I will need to recuse myself from this matter for conflict of interest with my place of employment. For the law director that I conferred with, I work with Jewish Family Service Association, where the resident is newly elected to the board of directors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sachs. We appreciate your making that recusal on this matter for the record at this time. And we will then proceed.
My name is Ron Kluchin. I'm the architect for the project. We were here at the Planning Commission. We were also at the Architecture Review Board. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the lot consolidation, and the Architecture Review Board unanimously approved our design of our house and the site plan. One small change in the site plan where we reduced the size of the driveway, the width of the driveway. Other than that, I believe it's pretty straightforward. It's a lot consolidation. The lot will end up being about 3/4 of an acre when it's done. It's consolidated. And we hope to start construction on the house in the next several months.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kluchin. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kluchin? Any comments at this time?
Mayor?
Yes,
I'd
Mrs.
just like to hear from Councilman Rocks, since he was at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yes, Councilman Ronk, you have the floor.
Sure. So I was at the Planning Commission, and we did vote unanimously to approve the demolition of the two homes on University Parkway, and we voted for the consolidation of those two lots. They could build one home that toggles both lots. It's a pretty big home. I can't remember the square footage. It's 8,000 square feet, right? And then a finished basement, which is not included in the square footage. So it's probably, if not the biggest house in University Heights, it's in the top 5. And I spoke about how I felt University Heights needed a diversity in our housing stock, and this is something that will be, of course, different than the rest of the housing stock. It is much larger. If it ever hits the market and there's a family in the need of an 8,000 square foot home, they don't have to go to Beechwood or Shaker Heights or Cleveland Heights. We have one here. So I am really excited about this project. It looks really nice. It went through the Architecture Review Board for preliminary approval. And I think it's going to be a great addition to the street. We're seeing especially on that part of town and into Beechwood, a lot of homes being demolished for the construction of new homes. So I'm very excited that that's happening in University Heights as well. When I drive through Beechwood, I see quite a bit of it as an architect. We're doing a couple houses in Beechwood of demos and reconstruction. So I'm very excited that we have that energy here. So thank you for investing in University Heights.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I may add on to Councilman Rock's observations, among the things that also were discussed on the record, Councilman Rock himself raised the issue of the width of the driveway. And when this was passed by the Planning Commission, it was recommended that the driveway go ahead. It was one of the conditions was that the driveway would be narrowed. Also, There was discussion, given the size and the features of the house, that confirmation by the applicant that was made that evening that the house and its features were for the private residential use of the applicant, and that finally the passage is also conditioned upon the entry of a development agreement, including the posting of bond to be entered with the city prior to the demolition of the homes. So I believe that covers everything. Mr. Cicero is here. He was not at the meeting, but he's serving in the law director capacity. I know Mr. Rock. Anything I may have forgotten?
In terms of conditions, that was it.
I think that was it, yes. Mr. Cicero, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you succinctly put it. In reviewing the plans, there is a makeup that I think was represented, be installed in his dwelling, and that the applicant and the planning commission had represented for private use only.
Yeah, yes.
And I think that should be incorporated into the motion.
Okay, okay. Private
By the homeowners and or guests.
I understand. Okay, all right, very good. So that should probably be, as the law director has said here in the motion. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr. Cooney.
One of the things that's in the current in the code for the city is about maintaining architectural integrity. And Councilman Rock commented on the size of the home. How does that fit into the integrity of the neighborhood? Obviously, there will be a significant difference. Not that we don't want to encourage development whenever possible. So when you look at that statement throughout the city code, how does that sort of embrace that requirement?
Well, I'll tell you, I felt that it did because on that street, University Parkway, and then on the adjacent street, Churchill, those houses are a lot wider. They were not homes that were built in 1820, 1830, like the rest of them. Like where I live, my house was built in 1830. These houses were built much later, so they were a lot wider homes. I believe the one's a ranch, so usually with a ranch home, they're more sprawling because they're not stacking the program. So they're much wider of a footprint. For instance, the driveway had a loop driveway, and they're going to do a loop driveway in the same plan. I just followed it. It fit right in for what we're seeing.
If I may,
Yeah, why don't we start with the applicant?
We'll go back to the panel.
couple things. On Churchill, as you had stated, and on University Parkway, there are actually several houses that are well over 7,000 square feet. There are other houses that are on more than one lot on University Parkway, and I showed that to the Planning Commission. Also, when I designed the house, one of the things that we thought about was keeping the house low, so we put a hip roof with a very low pitch to keep it well below. I think your code is 35 foot to the mean. We're at like 28 feet to the top of the house, top of the roof. So we're quite a bit lower, and that was all part of keeping it as small as we could with the size of house it is. And also the setbacks, which in your code, the side yard is, I believe, 12 feet, side yard setback. We're at well over 25 feet. So we're going to have lots of landscaping on both sides of the house, which the other houses do not have.
The size of the home, the overall height of the home would be, it would be taller than other homes in the area, or would it be equivalent?
Just the opposite. What I said was, your code is 35 foot to the mean. The mean is halfway up the roof. That's the definition of height in your code. We are well below that 35 feet.
No, that's not the question I asked. The question I asked is would the peak of a house be equivalent or taller than the other homes in the area?
No. No, there's a house across the street that's probably going to be taller than our house. The new house that's under construction right now.
Mr. Cooney, may I move on, or
Sure.
did you?
No, it's fine.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Mrs.
Thank
Blank.
I think I hear what Mr. Cooney is saying, and I have the same reservations. All of the homes being built in Beechwood, where they are tearing down all of these smaller, older homes to put in much larger homes, they're all very beautiful, I agree. But I've always had the same concerns about that happening in our community because we have such a different feeling, so many older homes. But to Mr. Rock's point, if you drive up and down those streets, or we've all walked them when we were campaigning, those homes are a lot of them on double lots, like you said, but they're much, much larger and they're more sprawled out. They're not like, say, your street or certainly mine or Mr. Rock's, where they're built in the 30s or 40s and the lots are all very narrow and they're much more historical looking. I would have to agree that putting a home like this one, it's beautiful, on that street makes sense. If that were to be on my street, I think I'd kind of feel differently because it would stick out like a sore thumb, and diversity of housing stock or not, it wouldn't have that same feel.
I've driven down the street and have seen others.
Yeah, they're much.
Turning it to scale.
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to fit in well.
The architectural design between this one and the others that have been, the newer construction are very similar.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, sort of like, not necessarily these different pockets, but just thinking of the overall area.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
I would have to say Mr. Klitsch is right on track and that I think it'll fit in well.
Okay.
I mean, planning knows what they're doing, but I hear what you're saying.
Great,
I
thank
hear
you.
what you're saying.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Gould.
Two questions, one first for the applicant and one for the assistant law director. What was the trick you said you did with the roof to make it shorter? What was that?
It's not a trick.
I don't know architectural terms, so when Mr. Rock says stacking the program,
We try not to use
I don't,
the word
okay.
We lowered the roof. It has what a roof pitch is?
Yeah.
Instead of being a steep pitch, which most of those houses, like in the other, when I lived on Dysart, as a matter of fact, we had a very steep roof. This has a very low pitch, which kept the roof down.
Gotcha.
And it's a hip roof instead of a gable roof, so the ends aren't tall. They're the lowest part of the roof. So
Okay.
they kept the scale of the house down.
Thank you. And the second, I guess, Mayor, perhaps, do you have the list of the conditions?
I think they were just the conditions that we just recited on the record.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we can just incorporate, I don't have a list to make for the motion, but it should be part of the motion.
Yeah, they weren't extensive. They were basically the driveway width, the private use of the house and its features, and then the development agreement. Yeah.
Okay.
All that was listed in the memo I sent out.
Oh, right. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
Any other questions or comments on the application? And if not, is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation with the 3 conditions.
I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion by Mrs. Weiss to approve the Planning Commission recommendation with 3 conditions, those being as to the driveway with the private use of the residential residence and its features, and the need for entering into a development agreement with the city. We have a second by, I think it was by Mrs. Blanco?
Yes.
Second by Mrs. Blanco. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. And then we note one more time for the record the extension of Mrs. Sachs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank the applicant and the client especially for willingness to invest in the community and continuing to make University Heights their home and adding to the diversity of our housing stock, as Councilman Rock intonated, with this lovely soon-to-be addition. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Item B is Resolution 2022-08 of necessity declaring the intent to appropriate and acquire the fee simple interest in certain real property titled to University Square Real Estate Holdings LLC, known as 2203 Warrensville Center Road, bearing permanent parcel number 721-01-001, the City of University Heights, County of Cuyahoga, State of Ohio, as more fully described herein for the purpose of eliminating blight. And this is on first reading. Mr. Cicero, did you want to present on this first?
This is a statutory requirement that Mr. McConville has addressed with you previously. Again, as the mayor had stated, this is on first reading. We have to answer any questions. If you have any other additional questions, Mr. McConville had advised me if you are free to call or email him tomorrow, and we have this evening.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This is on first reading, so obviously we are not taking a vote on this evening. As this council is aware, council last year approved going ahead with the hiring of an appraiser to evaluate the property and prepare an appraisal for possible eminent domain proceedings with regard to this property. This resolution of necessity is part of that same process and furthers the actions taken by council and administration that began last fall.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Gould.
I just wanted to express my thanks to the administration and to the law director for placing this onto the agenda. When I see things like the collapse of a garage in Lakewood, when I know that our garage has become a place where crime, like an attempted carjacking, is occurring, it is clear to me that the state of being degraded that our garage is in has led it to become a place where people do not want to be, where people do not feel safe, where I, as a council person, have concerns for the safety of our citizens and those who visit that location, and also have concerns that because the location has become so undesirable to frequent, that the infrequency of visits may continue to lead, as it already has, to violent crime or attempts at violent crime occurring within the city of University Heights. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gould. Are there any other comments or questions, discussion with regard to this first reading? I think I would like to just, add to the record, while I do agree with Councilperson Gould and his observations here and have those same concerns. This particular resolution of necessity does focus on the core retail parcel, being 7201-01-001. It is certainly part of the overall University Square development, but the 001 parcel does not technically include the garage itself, although obviously they are necessarily intertwined as far as their use, and certainly the condition of the retail parcel has contributed significantly to the things that Councilperson Gould has described here going on in the garage. If there is nothing further about Resolution 2022-08, we will consider this matter read and we'll bring it back up for consideration at a later meeting. Thank you. Item C is Ordinance 2022-04, amending Ordinance 2021-52 by increasing the spending authority authorized therein for costs relating to a joint firefighter paramedic entrance exam participation agreement and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Chief Perko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This was previously approved by you not to exceed the $2,000 amount. This was taken back to the Regional Civil Service Committee meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, and it was determined for a couple of reasons that it would be necessary to raise this amount from $2,000 to $3,000. Two reasons primarily, one being that the city of Lyndhurst, which has formally conducted the application, distribution, and collection process, will now be turned over to a third-party company. And secondly, the candidate pool is being increased from a maximum capacity of 200 candidates to 300. And so while the testing numbers based on the previous 200 capacity would be relatively near that $2,000 mark, we have no way to determine how many candidates will actually apply for that. And based on the fees collected from the candidates that apply, it could raise the cost up to that 3,000 mark threshold.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Perko? And if not, is there a motion
to adopt this ordinance on emergency?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gould, is there a second? On emergency.
On emergency.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Mrs. Weiss and Mr. Gould. So that we have a motion on emergency to approve by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Blankenfeld. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will take two votes. The first is on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. The rules are suspended. Mrs. Thomas, the roll on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
And motion passes. Thank you. Next is item D, ordinance 2022-05, enacting codified ordinance chapter 1615 entitled Fireworks. This is on first reading. Sponsor is Mrs. Weiss. Mrs. Weiss, would you care to take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Actually, the comment by Mr. Wachter was spot on in terms of what we discussed in the safety committee meeting a few weeks ago. The density of University Heights, the safety of our residents, and the loud noises that will affect the animals and people who suffer from PTSD is a real concern. I fully support this ordinance in conjunction with a future zoning ordinance that needs to be tweaked, that the law director will be bringing forth shortly.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Any further comment, question, Mrs. Sacks?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the premise of this. The one thing that I want to discuss is in the exceptions, item C, except that are manufacturing and et cetera of toy pistols, toy guns, et cetera. And I don't know if there's a way to describe that what would be exempt are really toys, things that look like toys. They're brightly colored, they're like squirt guns, that kind of thing, rather than those toy pistols that look like they're real, with maybe a little something that differentiates them, where we had some serious issues in the city of Cleveland because of that type of misunderstanding. So it's not really a fireworks issue, it is a kind of a safety issue. Besides being explosive, it's really in how it appears. So
I'm wondering if they're referring to cap guns, because it's it basically it ignites that little bit of powder.
So there's a lot of, toy pistols, not guns.
Right.
There's a lot of.
I'm wondering if that's
So
what the
maybe
reference
let's
is to.
call that what it is. I don't know if that has a specific name.
Yeah, Mrs. Sacks, I think I understand your point, although I think I also understand what Mrs. Blankfeld is saying, that I think I don't think the drafting the ordinance that the committee or the law director endeavored to make a complete statement on toy guns as much as we were looking to make clear that cap guns in particular, which have a very mild,
Ignition.
yes, thank you, very mild ignition in them, that they are being, exempted from this. But I think you raise an interesting point for further consideration, whether it be here or in other legislation.
Thank you. And Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Cicero.
Thank you. I believe, Councilwoman Sachs, that what you're discussing, I believe, is already regulated by the federal government, where you can't have something that looks exactly like a real gun. It has to have that orange tip, or it's an outrageous color, those kinds of things. But the law department will look into it and see or incorporate something that references another law.
Right, that orange tip is almost like not even apparent, for many reasons. So that's maybe too subtle if it's really a toy.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Gould.
One of the things, turning ordinances like this to committee for discussion with the individuals who are going to be enforcing them. I believe that the timeline of this law, the state law that we're attempting to counteract, is not until July of this year. I would still like to keep this on for second reading next time, but I intend to have it as an item for discussion with the prosecutor, the fire chief, and the police chief at our safety committee meeting at 6 o'clock prior to our next regularly scheduled council meeting, so that we can at least hear from them and ensure that what has already been discussed and contemplated more generally meets their expectations and needs in application prior to its passage, and I'll bring any concerns that they have back to the council as a whole at that February 7th meeting.
Very good. That seems like a reasonable course of action, Mr. Gould. It seemed that if we keep it on for second reading at the next meeting, that if there are minor adjustments that could be made on the fly at the meeting, if there are more than a handful of adjustments, it could be heard on second reading and brought back for a third reading as amendments. So that would seem to be a reasonable course for the council to take, especially with the safety committee meeting already scheduled for the hour preceding the next council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there any further discussion? Well, I would like to take a moment to thank Mrs. Weiss and members of the committee, both currently and the previous council for their work on this, for the previous and current prosecutors' work on this, as well as our law directors. I do think it is an appropriate piece of legislation for our community especially. I don't wish to make a judgment as to the use of fireworks in every single community across the state of Ohio, but I believe that what we have here in this particular ordinance is appropriate for our community and reflects the values of our community and reflects the population density of our community, which is the second most densely populated community in Cuyahoga County, second only to the city of Lakewood. There is no way to discharge fireworks in the city of University Heights that can be done in a way that your neighbors all around don't know about it. And it is simply not an activity suitable for the density of our population. And this is in addition to the points that were raised by our resident Scott Walker during the open forum, as ratified further by Mrs. Weiss and echoed throughout the discussion here tonight. So if there is nothing further, we will consider this to have been heard on first reading. The Safety Committee will take it up at their next meeting, which is scheduled at 6 p.m. Immediately preceding the next council meeting, and this will be on for second reading then at the next city council meeting. So moving on to item E, Ordinance 2022-06, providing for submission to the electors of the city of University Heights a proposed amendment to the charter to amend Article 7, Section 3, relating to the Civil Service Commission for the purpose of expanding the number of permitted eligible candidates for open positions in the police and fire service and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. Cicero, did you want to speak on this first?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to let council members know that in substance, this provides more flexibility for the city. The charter is very restrictive. What this would do, if placed on the ballot and approved by the voters, would permit the Civil Service Commission to establish by rule. Is it can you pick from 3, can you pick from 5, can you pick from 10? Furthermore, the Planning Commission, the Civil Service Commission has reviewed this proposed charter amendment and has approved it, as has the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. So the language meets the statutory requirements to be placed on the ballot.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cicero. Mrs. Wells.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments, and I did speak to Mr. McConville about this also. However this is going to be marketed, it needs to be extremely clear because it is a very confusing process to somebody who's, I mean, council understands that because we've been involved in the changes and what's, what's needed for our safety forces, but it's not an easy concept from what we have now versus what we need. So I don't know, Mary, how is this going to be marketed? How are the residents going to understand this? And then I just have one more question.
Well, yeah, I mean, the marketing, that's an interesting point. I mean, this is one of 2 charter amendments that we are anticipating for the upcoming election this spring, currently set in May. And it is a matter of, I know that there may be some knee-jerk reactions to some that if they don't understand what it is that's being put in front of them, they may not be inclined to support it. What this does is this makes our police and fire department more competitive in being able to hire desirable candidates for our police and fire services. It makes it easier and more streamlined to approve the number of eligible candidates for an open position at one time. We are in competition with other agencies in the region for high quality candidates, and though we have obtained a number of high quality recent hires, we've also lost out on a number of high quality recent hires because other cities, other agencies were able to act more nimbly. It seems to me that one of the aspects that we would want to let the community know is we are, by voting in favor of this charter amendment, you are putting the city of University Heights in the position of continuing to hire the best candidates that we can attract and to be able to get them job offers before other communities hire them away from us. That may be one way of putting it. I think most people can understand that they want high quality police officers, high quality firefighters and paramedics, and that by having this amendment, that increases our ability to bring the best candidates to the agencies here to serve our residents. So I'm hopeful that that will be a resounding reason to vote yes, and I think it's a good thing where all of our council and our mayor and our fire chief and our police chief can all speak favorably towards why this is important for the community and why this only stands to improve the quality of candidates that are ultimately hired by our police department and our fire department.
Thank you. That was a great explanation. In terms of marketing, are you foreseeing email, social media, website? Is that what you're foreseeing the marketing piece to be?
I think those are all in the mix. I have not myself come up with a marketing plan, but I'm sure that those of us who are particularly interested in seeing this through, that we can get together as a group and collaborate on how we can best do that and best make the case to the community. I think you see a diversity of folks up here, and you know, with your support and my support and support from everyone here on council, I tend to think this community could say, hey, if this mayor and this council can get together on this, there must be something right about it.
Mayor, having managed that process for
Yes.
Beechwood for many years, and that is a community that's much larger, much, you know, they have a lot more in their bank. Even they have great candidates, you know, snapped up by other communities. So everything that we as such a small community with a limited budget can do to make it easier to get those candidates on board more quickly is really important. I mean, we want to do this in a way that's, you know, fiscally responsible, but, you know, social media only reaches a certain number of people. There's a lot of people that don't follow the city's website or don't follow the city's little Facebook page or that kind of thing. So I don't know how we can get that word out. We'll work together on this. Maybe Mrs. Weiss has an idea, but it really has to be a push to make it very clearly understood that you put it really well the way you described the process.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blanco. Mrs. Sachs.
Perhaps one of the simple approaches would be in the Mosaic magazine with the question and answer feature, if that's appropriate. Does that reach all of the households? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So that's one possibility as part of the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, we have generally had a prohibition against politicking in the Mosaic magazine. I think that there can be a distinction drawn here. This is a charter amendment
I don't
with
know if
governance.
it's politicking as making a particular issue more easily understood for all of the residents.
Yeah, I think there is a way that can be
Yeah.
done.
I
Yes, Mrs. Wells.
have one more question.
Yes.
So you mentioned another possible charter
Yes.
amendment. So I'm foreseeing a charter review process starting, you know, after our council retreat. And I don't know if you can share right now what you feel that a charter amendment would be. Maybe that could be part of, like this, we know is an emergency. I don't know what that is because I will kind of overload them. They're going to get in May, and then they're going to get them again probably in March. I don't think we're going to hit the November mark, but.
Yeah, no, the other proposed charter amendment, peeking ahead to, you know, a meeting or two from now, would be one that amends the charter with regard to, under our home rule provisions and public meetings and to the extent to which we might be able to hold public meetings online. Currently, home rule cities that have charters that are conducive to being allowed to, in times of emergency, such as times during this pandemic, be able to have online meetings and still have them count as legal public meetings. Currently under our charter, we have, and if Mr. McConville will hear, he could probably articulate this slightly better, but currently under our charter, we have adopted the open meeting rule as set forth by the Ohio Revised Code. There's legal opinion out there that home rule cities such as ours, chartered cities such as ours, may put provisions in their charters regarding to how public meetings are conducted, including allowing the online conduct of public meetings, which is why some communities around Ohio have nevertheless continued with having council and committee meetings on Zoom or other online platforms and are still within the bounds of the law of conducting their meetings. I do understand that we are due for a full charter review, which would be a thoughtful and lengthy process. I don't think we should wait on this second amendment to adjust our public meeting requirements so that, for instance, 2 weeks ago, we might have been able to hold a meeting online via Zoom instead of being in this room, or even this meeting online via Zoom instead of being in this room, when conditions are appropriate such that it would be better to be online than in person. I think that would be something that it would be better for ourselves and for the community as a whole if we were to have that amendment put before the community sooner rather than later. And I think many members of the community would understand and even appreciate that amendment as well. And it would give people 2 reasons to vote yes in May.
Yeah.
Mr. Gould.
I would just say that if there is a way to get that on so that they are on the ballot together, I think it would be appropriate to have these 2 things there. I understand the Vice Mayor's concerns, and I share them. The review and amendment of the charter should not be made piecemeal. You shouldn't have this or that, it should be seen as a whole. But when you're dealing with something like our safety forces, ensuring that we're able to keep a strong, available list of individuals to join them, or when you're dealing with keeping access and transparency with the people's work and having meetings that allow them to attend and participate virtually, I think that I see piles of snow outside, and I know that some of our population is not able to walk down here, and sit in the same room with us. It may be nice, not only for the COVID reasons, but for others to allow that to happen. And so if we can get that on by, May, so we all have the May ballot together, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Flynn.
I agree with both Mrs. Weiss and Mr. Gould, but to his point, a charter review should be really comprehensive, and you don't want to be doing it piecemeal. But in light of COVID, and when we were doing the online meetings, we had a lot more attendance at council meetings. So while some people may watch it, on YouTube or whatever, it was delightful to see that many people showing up for council meetings, which even if it were not COVID, we would not have a packed house. I would encourage the same that we have both of those on the May ballot.
Very good, thank you.
Mayor, if I might add,
Yes.
from a historical perspective, in 30 years of being a municipal prosecutor when I started, the state law has a rule of 10. It wasn't 3, it was 10 were certified for the list. But then again, back in that time period, some of those young men and women were hired, and then the city would pay for them to go to the academy. You had 250, 300, 400 applicants. And what the rule of 3, what a lot of cities did with the rule of 3 or a rule of 5, is it enabled only the best and brightest on the tests to be picked from. Now, in a city that I'm familiar with, that is not in, not this city, but on the east side, 26 candidates applied to take the test for a law enforcement exam. And of those, only 8 passed. And you are in a highly competitive field. I have police officers in their jurisdictions that are leaving to become firefighters in the city of Cleveland. So this will give the flexibility to your Civil Service Commission, if it goes to the voters and the voters agree with it, to adapt to any situation in any era.
Thank you, Mr. Cicero. I'd be remiss if I didn't call upon either of our chiefs, Chief Perko or Chief Rogers, if anything they'd like to add with respect to this matter. I know you both support it. I know you've both spoken at length about it at the Civil Service Commission level, so your thoughts and feelings on this are well documented. But if there's anything you'd like to say this evening, would invite you at this time if there's anything you care to bring up. I think we've covered a lot of your points already, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I want to make sure you've had the opportunity to be heard if there's anything you'd like to say. Chief Rogers?
Just for a little further context on this matter, our most recent entrance test, more than half of our entrance test list of the candidates were already hired before we were even able to view their applications, because we could only view 1 of 3 at a time.
Chief, I'm sorry, can you
We're
put the
having a-
microphone up there?
Is that better?
That's a little better, yes.
Okay, to reiterate, our most recent entrance test for police, more than half of the list of candidates was already hired by other agencies by the time we were able to receive their 1 of 3 application from the Civil Service Commission. So that really created issues with our ability to hire. And the entrance test that was prior to that in 2018 had very similar stats as well. That because of the 1 of 3 restriction, we simply could not get the candidates before other cities to hire them. Obtaining data from east side suburbs and municipalities last month. Some of the information we received that of all the east side municipalities, the 10 that did respond to our polls, our requests for information, all 10 of those did not have charter language that regulated their civil service hiring rules. And all 10 of those cities had hiring rules of 1 of 10 or greater. Again, just further background on the need to modify this charter, and we're grateful for supportive council to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Burka?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think there's any need to echo a lot of the well-documented comments, as you indicated, over the last 4 years or so, and to echo Chief Rogers with the criticalness of public safety hiring going on across the country right now. But as all of us as representatives of the city and the chiefs of public safety, obviously safety is paramount to us in the city, and to provide professional, high-quality service to all of our residents. And that is best accomplished with the people that provide the service. The best equipment and apparatus and items that we use definitely assist us in our mission to provide that service, but it's the people to do that. And so we're talking about an investment here, and an investment of a candidate that will likely serve the city for a minimum of 25 years, and in some cases up to 35 years. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our possibility to ensure that we're attracting as many candidates and the highest quality candidate to provide that service. So we appreciate everybody's support.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. This ordinance is being heard on emergency. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-06 and declaring an emergency?
Also moved.
Very good. Motion by Mrs. Blankenfeld on emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cooney. Any further discussion? We will take 2 votes. Mrs. Thomas, please take the roll first on the suspension of the rules.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Yeah, the rules are suspended. Mrs. Thomas, the roll on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is item F, ordinance 2022-07, appointing June Drayton as Assistant Clerk of Council and declaring an emergency. This is an emergency. It is introduced by all council. Mrs. Weiss, would you care to take lead here?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. After an extensive search, we have this. I guess I'm going to go back a little bit and explain to you how we did this, just for transparency. So, with the help of Mr. Kennedy, we put an ad in various online job portals, and sorted through many resumes. Ms. Thomas, Councilwoman Blankenfeld, and I did the interviews. Ms. Drayton was actually extremely qualified. The little known fact is that she actually trained Ms. Thomas many years ago. So, as well as working in other municipalities. She's a consummate professional. She is everything that we had desired in an assistant. Ms. Thomas will be in charge of training her. She'll be a part-time clerk, a part-time assistant clerk, and we're very excited to have her on board.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Any questions or comments?
Mayor?
Yes,
I
Mrs. White.
just wanted to say how delighted I was that Mrs. Thomas will be ably assisted, but by somebody of such experience is a real bonus to our council and the city. Ms. Drayton, having been clerk of council for this community years ago, as well as others, and having held a number of different positions, assisting administrations and council, is really going to be quite a help and a real addition that is greatly appreciated. Can't wait to have her aboard.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankville. Mr. Cooney.
My understanding is that you were trained by her before.
Yes.
Are you going to enjoy having the roles reversed?
We're going back many years, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Understand I had the pleasure of meeting the candidate and look forward to having her join the team. Also discovered that I had been previously in touch with this candidate a couple of years ago, not obviously in a candidate type capacity, but simply she had some positive things to say about our service department, which I recall I did pass along to our service employees. And you know, you get a lot of feedback from residents, and it's always nice to get a positive, affirming message from someone when it's completely unsolicited and not necessary when you're just doing a day's work. But it just so happens that Mrs. Drayton took the time to let them know that they were doing a great job, and she appreciated it. And you gotta love that kind of outlook and mentality in anyone, and then to have somebody like that joining the team here is a positive sign of good things to come.
It's delightful that she is a resident, a longtime resident, so she knows the community as well. I mean, lots of cities, the people who hold that position don't necessarily live within the community, but it's terrific that she does.
Yes. So, is there a motion?
Also move.
Okay, on emergency?
Yes, on emergency.
Very good. Motion by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cooney. Any discussion? We will take two votes. The first is on suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Glenville?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
And on the main motion?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Glenville?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
And motion carries. Welcome to Mrs. Drayton. Item G is a motion to amend the 2022 calendar of meetings and changing the Monday, June 20, 2022 City Council meeting to Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 to reflect City Hall offices being closed on June 20th, 2022 for Juneteenth. Just briefly, following the lead of the federal government and negotiated with the unions in the collective bargaining process, we have added the holiday of Juneteenth to the roster of the calendar of city holidays. As it just turns out, the 19th of June this year is on a Sunday, following conventions regarding observed holidays. When a holiday falls on the weekend, if it falls on a Saturday, it's observed on Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, it's observed on Monday. So Juneteenth will be celebrated by the city, will be observed by the city on the 20th as a city holiday. Traditionally, we would not hold a city council meeting on a city holiday. We currently have on our schedule our second meeting of June on Monday the 20th. We'd like to rectify that here. Because the council did approve the previous notice, it is required that the council would approve the amendment to the notice, recognizing then our city council meeting would be moved to Tuesday, June 21st in observance of Juneteenth. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Montfeld. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenship?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Very good, motion carries, and the city notice will be so updated as amended. Next is item H, a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. The administration does not have anything that you would ask the council to move into executive session for this evening. So if there is nothing, I would then move on to the reports and communications from the directors of the departments of finance, Department of law, Department of health study, safety, et cetera, taking of action thereon. We'll start with finance. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I would like to let everybody know that we closed 2021 in our financial system last Thursday afternoon. I had hoped to get you final reports out today. I'll get those out tomorrow. There's a little hiccup today, but just want to give you some highlights of what's contained in those reports. And of course, we'll probably review a good portion of this tomorrow at the budget meeting. So our projected revenue in the general fund for 2021 is $14,343,345. Our actual revenue came in at $14,875,284. That's a positive variance of $531,939. If you look at our revenue for all our funds, we projected to collect a little over $18,773. Actual deposits accredited to revenue was $19,540,664. That difference of a little over $1.5 million is primarily made up of monies that we received last year that we won't spend until this year. That would include both money from the city of Cleveland for the train water line upgrade and the ARPA money that I know we discussed last year. So the first half of that tranche that we received from the federal government was a little over $670,000. We'll propose to use some of that in the budget for 2022. Not sure yet when we're supposed to get the second distribution from the government. Sometime in midsummer is all I know as of right now, but I'll let you know as I get more updated information. In terms of expenses for 2021, our projected expense level in the general fund was $15,874,606. We had actual expenses of $14,677,696, and we ended the year with open encumbrances, that's purchase orders that are payable against last year's budget appropriations, but we have not either received the goods or services yet. Our encumbrance carryover into this year is $342,008. So that difference comes out to $854,901 unspent in the general fund as of December 31st. Again, looking at things on an all funds basis, we had projected the final budget that was approved by council was $19,646,829. We actually spent $17,774,522. We had open encumbrances of $638,247. So that difference is a little over $1.2 million at year end. And again, that would represent some things that were originally scheduled to get paid in 2021, that because of a number of different circumstances or situations got moved into this. We'll be proposing to spend that money this year. On a cash basis, from statement of cash, we started the year with a balance of $5.37 million. We ended the year with $5.34 million. Our carrying encumbrance is going to be $318,582 in the general fund. So our unencumbered balance at the end of the year was $5,022,244. For all funds, beginning balance was $9,036,331. We ended the year with a balance, unencumbered balance of $10,428,451. And against that balance, we had a total amount of encumbrances, $614,821. So our ending unencumbered balance for all funds is $9,813,630. Couple other points of what's going on from our perspective in the department. We got our initial request for audit materials from our auditors. We'll start working on both the audit of the city and the audit of the CIC right away, so we're going to try and fast track those schedules. As I reported at the last meeting, all our information that was required to be filed in accordance with state law was sent down to the county. That's filed with the Budget Commission. That was filed and accepted last week, and we made the deadlines for that, so no issues there. And in the coming couple of weeks, we're going to focus on a lot of the year-end tax processing. That would be the compilation and distribution of both 1099s and W-2s for all the employees. So that's all I have this evening.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mrs. Weiss, you have a question?
I was just wondering, is there a way to tell if how many people and the dollar amount of the RETA credit with Form 10A for the work at home COVID?
They have provided us with 3 ranges of that. They're not sure on the exact logistics of the numbers until the returns start getting filed. But they have given us a range, and that was kind of factored into our estimates for collections next year. Hopefully, well, I can't say that the ranges that they gave us doesn't look like it's a major impact, but obviously in our position, any impact is something that we should consider. But I don't know the details of what those are going to be. It's really going to be up to the individuals that they file. It will also be up to the places of employment for those individuals to certify that they were working at home as opposed to working in the primary city where they're employed as opposed to the residency.
What was that range?
Pardon?
What was the range that they gave you?
I don't have the range in front of me, but I'll have that. I can talk about that tomorrow evening.
Okay, great, thank you.
Have a follow on your.
Sure, Mr. Koenig, go ahead.
Let that follow up on your question, or the question you asked. Does RETA provide any history, or do you have access to any history for the last couple of years to spot trends? Obviously, 2019, those are working from home versus 2020 and 21 will be very different. I'm curious as to if you have access to look at that data and the numbers, either on an annual or 6-month basis, whatever it might be. I'm just curious to see what the trend might be, if there's any way to sort of, if you look down the road, you can spot if there is a trend, maybe several years down the road, when people are going back to their office when not in the home, we could sort of, would help with some budgeting potentially. If we'd be able to get some data along those lines.
Councilman, there is the ability to pull data from the RETA system. Really, you can go back probably 5 or 6 years. What's happened in the 2 years I've been here, it's kind of an anomaly because of the COVID, and there was the other situation where there was additional receipts coming in from the schools before they moved everything back. But we're trying to use like 17, 18, 19 as a base point to compare where we're at. Some folks haven't gotten all the way back, others have. So, but there is a wealth of data out there that we'd be happy to talk to you about whatever you need. I can get it over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to as things progress over time, if we were to see, obviously either things continue to increase, they plateau, or maybe they would decrease, because it does impact expense of the city, we could then start to predict if an adjustment may need to be made, as opposed to trying to react to it.
Right, I agree.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, Mr. King.
I just wanted to add that trends might be a little bit difficult to identify. The state of emergency didn't end until June of 2021. It wasn't until August or so that companies were allowed by the state to change where an employee was being withheld from. So I know that in August, I moved my withholdings to University Heights. My wife moved 2/3 of hers to University Heights. That's when those changes were going to happen. So we should hopefully see some changes with the returns that come in the next few months.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Kennedy, were you finished? Did you have anything further?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Director Juan, Mr. Cicero, do you have a report?
Just briefly, in my role as prosecutor for the city, I have met with command staff of the police department in numerous telephone calls. I also met numerous officers. I showed up at shift change at 7 a.m. They tend to be more awake at 7 a.m. than 7 p.m. in my experience. Met with the Detective Bureau, and tomorrow morning I am meeting with Mr. Engelbrecht to revamp how we do some things as far as prosecution of building and housing and other cases. Other than that, no further report.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Cicero. Public Safety Police, report?
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Chief Rogers. Public Safety, Fire, Chief Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing of substance to report, more of a safety message. Just to reiterate the fact with the recent snowfall, as our residents are continuing to undig themselves, to make sure that they also clear any ventilation ports near the foundation of our home, such as the dryer, so that they don't have any issues with carbon monoxide in the home, and to also be diligent in not piling snow near the fire hydrants to assist us in making sure that those are clear. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Chief Perkins.
Service, Mr. Picorni has been excused from this evening's meeting and has no report. Building, Mr. White has been excused from this meeting and has no report. Housing and Community Development, Mr. Engelbrecht.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. City Engineer, Mr. Chuney.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chuney. Communications and Civic Engagement, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Good evening. I listened with interest to the discussion earlier about informing residents about charter amendments that would be put on the ballot. And as a resident of Solon, and as a former employee in the State House, I have a little bit of experience observing what Solon does and what we did in the State House. And I can email any of you with information about how Solon sends out a description to, I don't know if it's all residents or all registered voters, about explaining how what the ballot issues actually mean, because usually ballot language sometimes can be vague, and like I think the Vice Mayor mentioned, if it's vague and they don't understand what it means, you're most likely going to vote no or they're going to skip it. So I can get you some details on what Solon does, and I can dig into what other communities do as well, and help make an informed decision going forward.
And thank you, Mr. Cook. Mrs. Weiss.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering how the virtual committee meeting
We've received the
technology is
equipment,
coming
so
along.
it's ready to go whenever you want to add a meeting, we'll get it there.
So could it be available tomorrow for the finance meeting?
I can do my best.
Let's give it a try.
You know, it's a big, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so
It's arrived, it's good to go, and
okay, so we just, if Ms. Thomas, if you could just send a link out, connect with Mr. Cook tomorrow. So I do know that one finance committee, advisory committee member is being very careful about COVID, so he would very much like to participate online.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Cook, do you have anything further?
I do not.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Cook? Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Finally, Economic Development. Mrs. Drucker is excused, but I do have a report. The city will be welcoming a new restaurant to the Cedar Green area, Sauce the City, which is owned and operated by Chef Victor Searcy. Will be opening its second restaurant location at 14480 Cedar Road, which is the former Fish Sticks location. The restaurant is expected to open by March of this year. In addition to the original restaurant located on West 25th Street in Ohio City, Sauce City has 2 stands located in the Cleveland Browns Stadium, as well as 1 stand in the Cleveland Cavaliers Arena. And I might just add, though I have not actually tried a Sauce City chicken sandwich, I'm embracing the idea that as University Heights has been the home to the best pizzerias in the region, it is quickly also becoming the home to all the best chicken sandwiches in the region as well. So it's a trend that we can all get behind and become more part of, I suppose. Mr. Cooney.
With the chicken sandwich restaurants, is Cooper getting nervous?
You know, I haven't seen Cooper lately.
It's not a good sign.
Restaurant, isn't it?
I've never seen Cooper in one of these chicken sandwiches in one place.
I've heard it's good. The had chicken ranch, very good. So it should be great.
And we'll have a third one at South Taylor and Cedar,
We will.
just to kind of flesh things out for the city.
Chicken choices.
I'm looking forward.
Chicken, yes.
I think we could sponsor a chicken sandwich crawl. I mean, we need to walk to each one to work off the last sandwich we ate. Something like that. All right. Maybe Cooper can walk with us.
For seersucker.
For seersucker. Yes. A seersucker and National hot sauce don't go well together. But then again, that was dangerous. Anyway, looking forward to Sauce City joining us as soon as March of this year up to Cedar Green. Okay, we will now turn to the reports of standing committees and the taking of action thereon. Luckily, I have a cheat sheet here to know who to call on. So, Building and Housing, Mrs. Blankman.
Mrs. Thomas, I'm so grateful that Ms. Durden will be joining us because she's got to be overwhelmed, but she has indeed sent out doodle polls with lots of possible dates for our next Building and Housing Committee meeting to further discuss point of sale and how that process may be streamlined and updated. And she's also working on getting us a standing monthly meeting. Other than that, I have no other report. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankenfeld. Community Outreach, Mr. King.
Yes, I'll be working on organizing community outreach meetings going forward. We'll be working on getting a meeting for the Citizens IT Advisory Committee together to continue working with the IT review of the city. That's all I have for now.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. King. Economic Development, Mr. Ruck.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Mrs. West.
Thank you, Mayor. There will be a Finance Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow at Wiley at 7.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Recreation, Mr. Cooney.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Safety, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. As you alluded to earlier in the meeting, I have set a regular safety committee meeting before the first regularly scheduled committee council meeting of every month. Ms. Thomas has those dates in memo format, and I will ask her to publish those to the website I believe that Juneteenth is now the second meeting of that month, so it won't be affected from the memo that was already distributed. I did this, Mayor, because I wanted to have more transparency and ability for our citizens to expect when those meetings will be happening, because the work of that committee and the work of our safety force is just regularly life and death for our citizens. So I wanted to have that opportunity. Individuals who would like to add anything to the agenda or have matters to bring to the safety committee meeting can contact me. I will be meeting with the chiefs and with the city's prosecutor on the Monday preceding each meeting to set agendas which will be published to the public. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Service and Utilities, Mrs. Sachs.
No report.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. And Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Wells.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There will be a council and administration retreat on March 10th. And I believe we said it was from 5:30 to 9.
And as reflected earlier, if I may add, we will be distributing, Mr. Schaefer will be distributing the report from the consultant on municipal facilities, and I know that you may want to see the report first, but I would encourage Committee of the Whole to schedule a meeting shortly to hear from Mogovich and others with regard to that report.
Do you think that would be more appropriate than building and housing since it's facilities?
No, I think it's really a Committee of the Whole type meeting because it is all encompassing. But we can discuss that later on.
What are the times of that meeting?
Well, that hasn't been spoken to.
No, I'm sorry, the times of the committee of the 5:30.
Do we have a location yet for that?
Shaker Lakes.
Shaker Lakes Nature Center? Okay, very good. It's a nice location. Okay, anything further, Mrs. Wentz?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next item is reports of special committees and the taking of action thereon. Are there any such reports? If none, is there any unfinished or miscellaneous business this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Also moved, Mayor.
Motion by Mrs. Blankfeld, is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Sachs. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, very good. Motion carries. We are.
Good job. Can I have you for a minute? What happened? Quite a job.
Oh, maybe deer ran in the window.
That's happened too.